Hello, and welcome to Module 6.2, Solving Multi-Step Inequalities. Our objective for today is that I can solve multi-step linear inequalities. So, what do we do when it comes to solving multi-step inequalities? Well, if we look at letter A, we're going to solve these, and we're going to go about this the exact same way that we did with equations. So we've got our line down our equal sign. That's our wall that we need to, anything that we're doing from one side, or on one side, we need to do to the other. So we have 50 is greater than 0.8x plus 30. Now, my goal is always going to be to get the variable to one side and our numbers, our constants to another. So I'm going to subtract 30 from both sides. And we get 20 is greater than 0.8x. Now, my next step is going to be divide both sides by 0.8. And when I do that, I get that 25 is going to be greater than x. So we are approaching this the same way we did equations using SADMEP. We start with the addition subtraction on the outside, and then we work our way closer to the variable from there. So, letter B, we have negative 2 minus y over 5 is less than 23. So my first step, the opposite of minus 2, is plus 2. We get negative y over 5 is less than 25. Now, my next step, I want to get rid of that divided by 5, the negative 5. So I'm going to multiply by negative 5 on both sides of my inequality. And I'm going to get y. I flip the inequality symbol to greater than, and 25 times negative 5 is negative 125. Letter C. I'm going to start out with, I have a positive 5 on the right, so I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. And I get negative 9 is less than negative 3n. And then we need to divide both sides by negative 3. And negative 9 divided by negative 3 gives me a positive 3. I flip my inequality symbol, so it's positive 3 is greater than n. Now, there are 3 you-try problems that I'd like you to do on your own. Go ahead and then check your work against mine. All right, letter D. We're going to start by adding 7 to both sides. Negative 6a is going to be less than or equal to 24. My next step is going to be to divide both sides by negative 6. So we've got a is greater than, because we're going to flip our inequality symbol, greater than or equal to negative 4. Letter E. We have w over 8 minus 13 is greater than negative 6. So we're going to start by adding 13 to both sides of our inequality. We have w over 8 is greater than 7. So my next step then is to multiply both sides by 8. And we get w is greater than 56. And next, letter F. Before we do anything else, we're going to need to combine like terms on my left side of my inequality. So 7x plus 2x is 9x minus 1 is less than or equal to 29. My next step is to add 1 to both sides. 9x is less than or equal to 30. Then my final step is to divide both sides by 9, and x is going to be less than or equal to 10 over 3. Now, when it comes to expressing or choosing whether or not you want to have fractions or decimals as your answer, my rule of thumb is if you are going to get a terminating decimal, then it's okay to write it as the decimal. If you are getting a repeating decimal, in which case this would be a repeating decimal, it's 3.3 repeating, I would rather you leave it as the fraction because that is a more accurate value than a decimal approximation would be, especially if you need to do rounding. When you're this would also kind of change if you're dealing with real world scenarios. So if you're dealing with money or something like that, you would round that to the hundredths place on the basis of the fact that we measure money to the hundredths. All right. So let's take a look at example 2. It is write and solve multi-step inequalities. So just like we've been doing lately, we have these word problems, and I want to piece together the information that I'm getting from them. So we have the opposite of a number. So that's going to be negative x. Okay, our next piece is divided by 2. So we're going to start off, we've got negative x divided by 2. And then we have minus 17 is less than 7. All right, so we just kind of went piece by piece through our words there, and we wrote in the pieces that we needed to include. So letter B, we have 9 plus 2 times t is less than 5. So we've got 9 plus, so we have 9 plus 2 times t. 2t is less than 5. Less than 5. And I believe we wanted to not only write them, but solve them. So now we're going to add 17 to both sides. We're going back to letter A. So we add 17 to both sides. We have negative x over 2 is less than 24. And then we are going to multiply both sides by negative 2. We get x is greater than negative 48. I'll rewrite that so it's a little clearer. Negative 48. Now, the second one for letter B here, our first step is going to be to subtract 9 from both sides. We have 2t is less than negative 4. And our second step is to divide by 2. We get t is less than negative 2. All right, if you go to the next page, we have 2 you-try problems at the top. I'd like you to do those on your own, and then check your work against mine. So we start off with 7 is less than or equal to. So 7 is less than or equal to 2 subtracted by x. 2 subtracted by x divided by 4. So our first step, subtract 2 from both sides. We get 5 is going to be less than or equal to negative x over 4. And then our next step, we're going to multiply both sides by negative 4. And we get negative 20 is less than or equal to x. And actually not less than or equal to, negative 20 is going to be greater than or equal to x because we multiplied by a negative number. Okay. Letter D. We have 14 minus 3 times r. 14 minus 3 times r is greater than 11. Greater than 11. So my first step, subtract 14 from both sides. I get negative 3r is greater than negative 3. My next step is to divide both sides by negative 3. And I get that r is going to be less than positive 1. Negative 3 divided by negative 3 is positive 1. So our next set of examples here are all about distributive property and inequalities. So my first step, I'm going to distribute negative 2 times x and negative 2 times negative 5. So we get negative 2x plus 10 is less than or equal to 10. And my next step is to subtract 10 from both sides. I get negative 2x is less than or equal to 0. And then we divide by negative 2, we get x is greater than or equal to 0. Now, example B. We're going to start off with distributive property. So negative 2 is being distributed. So we have 15 is going to be less than or equal to 5 minus 8m minus 14. My next step, I need to combine like terms. 5 and minus 14, we get 15 less than or equal to negative 8m. 5 minus 14 is going to be negative 9. We add 9 to both sides, and we get 24. It's less than or equal to negative 8m. And my last step, divide by negative 8. 24 divided by negative 8 is negative 3. We flip our inequality symbol to m. Letter C. We start with distributive property again. We get 2y minus 2 plus 3y is less than 2. 2y plus 3y is 5y. Minus 2 is less than 2. We're going to add 2 to both sides. 5y is less than 4. And then we divide both sides by 5. Y is less than 4/5. If you wrote that as y is less than 0.8, that would be an acceptable response. All right, there are 3 you try problems. I want you to do those on your own and then check your work against mine. Letter D. We start by distributing negative 3 to both terms. So we have minus 3x plus 6 is less than or equal to negative 3. We're going to subtract 6 from both sides. We have negative 3x is less than or equal to negative 9. And then we divide both sides by negative 3. We get x, we flip our inequality symbol, is greater than or equal to a positive 3. Now, letter E. We start with distributive property again. 2 times 4x is 8x. 2 times 1 is 2. We have minus 10x is less than or equal to 20. Combine like terms. 8x minus 10x is negative 2x. Plus 2 is less than or equal to 20. So we subtract 2 from both sides. We get negative 2x is less than or equal to 18. Divide by negative 2. We get x is greater than or equal to negative 9. All right, letter F. We distribute. We get 4x plus 4 plus 2x is greater than or equal to negative 2. 4x plus 2x is 6x. Plus 4 is less than or equal to negative 2. We subtract 4 from both sides. 6x is greater than or equal to negative 6. And then we divide both sides by 6. X is greater than or equal to negative 1. All right, we're going to take a look at our next page where we are now going to be solving an inequality with a variable on both sides. So again, our process hasn't changed. Right? We still have the line down our inequality symbol, and we are still just trying to get variables to one side and our constants to another. And when we look at this, my goal is always going to be to try to get my variable to be positive if I can. Because if my variable is positive, that means we don't have to worry about moving signs around. So my first step here, we've got 3b on one side and a negative 2b on the other. So if we're going to do opposite operations, we could either subtract 3 or we could add 2. I'm going to add 2 to both sides because that's going to get me a positive variable. All right, so now we add 2b to both sides. we get 5b plus 12 is greater than 27. Now it's just back to work we've done already. We subtract 12 from both sides. 5b is greater than 15. And then we divide by 5. We get that b is greater than 3. Okay. Letter B. We start off with this one. I've got 2x minus 4 over 6 is greater than or equal to negative 5x plus 2. Well, I really want to get, I could distribute, but then I'm dealing with subtracting 2/3 and doing that as an opposite operation. That's kind of a mess. How about instead of that, I am going to just multiply both sides of my inequality by 6. And so when I do that, the 6's cancel out on the left, and I'm left with 2x minus 4 is greater than or equal to negative 30x plus 12 after I distributed the 6 to both terms. All right, now where do I want to move? I want to move my x's to the left side so that I can keep them, or well, make them positive. So we have plus 30x on both sides. So we have 32x minus 4 is greater than or equal to 12. We add 4 to both sides of our inequality. 32x is greater than or equal to 16. And then we go ahead and we divide by 32 on both sides. And we get that x is greater than or equal to 1/2. All right, letter C, we need to do distributive property first. So 2 times x, 2 times negative 2. We get 4x minus 4 is going to be greater than or equal to 3x minus 5. So I'm going to subtract the 3x from both sides because, again, this keeps my variable positive. In this case, it's just a positive 1. Minus 4 is less than or equal to negative 5. And we add 4 to both sides of our inequality. We get x is greater than or equal to negative 1. Okay. We're going to go back and redo that because I made a mistake. So my mistake was that when I distributed, I said that we had a 4x when actually, in actuality, we have 2x. So we're going to redo these steps here because I made that mistake. This is why we always want to look over our answers and make sure they make sense given the scenario. So 2x minus 4 is greater than or equal to 3x minus 5. So now this changes the math of what we want to do. Instead of moving the subtracting the 3x because we thought it was better that way, we're going to subtract 2x from both sides. And we get negative 4 is going to be greater than or equal to x minus 5. Now we add 5 to both sides, and we get positive 1 is greater than or equal to x. So it's always important to look at your answer and just do a quick look over of the work to make sure you're right. In that case, I was wrong, and I was able to go back and correct it right away. All right. Letters D, E, and F are you tries. Please pause the video, try these on your own, and then check your work against mine. So, letter D. We have 4x plus 7 is less than or equal to 2x minus 1. I'm going to start by subtracting 2x from both sides. We get 2x plus 7 is less than or equal to negative 1. My next step is to subtract 7 from both sides, and I get 2x is less than or equal to negative 8. Divide both sides by 2. X is less than or equal to negative 4. Letter E, this one is similar to one on the previous page, where we're going to start by getting rid of that fraction. And we're going to multiply both sides of our inequality by 2. So we're going to get 14x plus 2 is less than 4x minus 8. Well, 14x is greater than 4x, so I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. And we get 10x plus 2 is less than negative 8. I subtract 2 from both sides. 10x is less than negative 10. And then when I divide both sides by 10, I get that x is less than negative 1. All right, letter F. We have 4y minus 28 when we distribute is less than or equal to, we have distribution on the right as well, 2y plus 18. So I'm going to subtract 2y from both sides so that I keep my variable positive. 2y minus 28 is going to be less than or equal to 18. And now we go ahead and we add 28 to both sides. We get that 2y is less than or equal to 46. Our final step, divide by 2, and we get that y is less than or equal to 23. All right, now, the next section here is inequalities with special solutions. So let's take a look at letter A. We have n plus 5, or 9 plus 5n is less than or equal to 5n minus 1. So we're going to subtract 5n from both sides. Our variables are going to cancel out. And so we have 9 is less than or equal to negative 1. Is 9 less than or equal to negative 1? No, it's not. So this is no solution. There is no value that I could substitute in for n and get a true inequality. Letter B. The first step I'm going to have to do on the right side is combine like terms. So we have 8 plus 6x is greater than or equal to 7x minus x is going to be 6x plus 2. We subtract 6x from both sides, and we are going to get 8 is greater than or equal to 2. Now, that is a true inequality. 8 is greater than 2, so it is all real numbers. So we could take any value, substitute it in for x, and we will have a true inequality. All right, letters C and D are yours to try, and then you're going to check your word against mine. Check your work against mine. All right. So we start by distributing on the right side. The left side remains the same. 3 times 8 is 24. 3 times 3r is plus 9r. We subtract 9r from both sides. And we get 15 is less than or equal to 24. And that is true, so that is all real numbers. Letter D, we start off by distributing again. So we have 3y plus 4 is greater than, we distribute 2y plus 6 plus y. On the right, we combine like terms. We have 3y plus 4 is greater than, 2y plus y is 3y plus 6. Subtract 3y from both sides. And we get 4 is greater than 6, which we know is not true, so this is no solution. All right, now if we go to the next page, we have example number 1. So we're going back to the very beginning of the lesson, which is the application of the lesson. Don't ask me, I didn't lay the textbook out. So we have Susie, and she wants to self-publish her comic book. One printing company offers to publish the book for a $220 flat rate plus $3 per copy of the book, and her maximum budget is $400. We want to know how many books can she publish, write an inequality to model the situation, and then solve. So how many books can she publish is what we're going for. Okay. And so I'm going to define my variable. My x is going to be number of books. So I know that the $220 flat rate is just the startup cost of setting up this print shop. And I am adding $3 per book that she writes. And I know that the maximum budget is $400. So the cost of printing everything needs to be less than or equal to that $400 value. So now that I have my inequality set up, I can go ahead and subtract it, or solve it. So we subtract 220 from both sides. We get 3x is going to be less than or equal to 180. So what we've essentially done is we've taken the setup cost away from her budget. And so now we're going to find out, we're going to divide out the $180 that she has remaining to use on actually publishing the books and copies of the book. We're going to find out if we divide it by $3 per copy, how many copies is she going to be able to make with that money? And you're going to get 60 comic books. So we have 60 books is our answer for this one. X is going to be less than or equal to 60 books. If she went all the way up to 60, she would spend all $400 of her budget. She can pick any value less than that as well. All right, letter B, we have Jamal. And Jamal is going to spend, he has $40 to buy tickets to a performance for himself and his friends. If he wants to buy a $10 membership, he can, and then he can buy tickets for $5 each. And we want to know how many tickets can he buy while remaining within his budget. So our variable for this, x, is going to be equal to number of tickets. Okay. So let's set up our inequality. We have $40. He has $40 to spend on his this performance. So $40 is going to be greater than or equal to, right? Because that's the most that he can spend. $40 is greater than or equal to the $10 membership that he has to pay for, plus $5 per ticket times number of tickets. So my first step in solving this is subtracting the $10, right? We're taking away the membership fee from the amount of money that he has available to spend on this show. So now he has $30 remaining. That's going to be what is divided amongst the tickets. So we divide by $5 per ticket. And out of that $30, we're able to buy 6 tickets. Okay, so 6 tickets is going to be greater than or equal to x. Or we could say x is less than or equal to 6 tickets. All right, that is the end of our notes for today. If we have any questions, please bring them to class tomorrow. Otherwise, have a great day.